Having the correct enclosure for your bird of prey is really important. Therefore, I think it's really good if you were to follow these 5 tips. Number 1 is the size of the enclosure, which is a fairly obvious thing, of course. Making sure there's enough room for your bird to jump from one perch to the other, spread its wings fully, plenty of headroom, things like that. Number 2, to think about having a double door system and also having lock on the inside of the door so you can shut yourself inside with your bird for security reasons. Number 3 is to have a fully covered roof. This stops any rain getting in and stops other things falling in, like twigs and leaves and even birds defecating when they're flying above, which is a risk to your bird's health. Number 4, you need to think about the materials you're using so that the bird has something that's going to last and it's robust, but also it'll keep the bird's feather condition in as good condition as possible. And number 5 is to think about the interior of that enclosure. That's the different types of perches, what you're going to put on the floor and things like that. A really suitable professional standard enclosure is going to be really beneficial for your bird because it will most likely spend most of its life inside that aviary. You need to think of the enclosure as being like a bedroom for the bird. It's not something for it to fly in really, because you're going to be flying your bird outside most of the time. You may sometimes have the bird molting and it's having a bit of rest from free flying because it's going to be fed extra food, but essentially it's not going to get a lot of flying in the aviary. Even if you had a very large aviary, it's not going to be the same as having open space where you can fly up and down from trees or perch to perch or even fly really high in the sky. Now, it is important to have different heights of perches so your bird can jump up and down. This is really good for its fitness and agility, keeping it nice and strong, of course. But generally, size doesn't have to be the first thing you think about when it comes to building your enclosure. Now, say building your enclosure, you may wish to have it built for you. And if you think you're not really that experienced in building enclosures, perhaps get some help, or as I say, have someone build it for you. But unless that person who's building it is a falconer or an animal keeper and knows what to build, you may have to instruct them on certain things that they need to do. So when it comes to the materials, things like zoo mesh, which is what I've got on these aviaries just here. It's a very soft type of a mesh and it's called zoo mesh for a good reason. And this is a good example of something that will prevent your bird from hurting itself or damaging its feathers on the mesh. Now, when you go to a garden centre, for example, they'll have a display like this one with various types of chicken wire and things like that. And you should never use anything like that as the main mesh for your bird because feathers can very easily be damaged on it. Now, on the ceiling of this safety corridor here, I've got this mesh, which isn't really very good for birds of prey, but it's only this safety corridor. It's only there just in case a bird gets out when it shouldn't. So it doesn't really matter quite so much if it's something the bird isn't really going to touch at all, or very unlikely to. It's the main enclosure you've got to really concern yourself with. This type of material is really lovely and smooth. It's a type of plastic, but it's actually really strong and durable, easy to keep clean and nice and smooth for the bird's feathers. Shelf perches like this are great as well, especially as they have this type of astroturf in them, which is really good for the bird's feet. And I will talk in another video about exactly why it's good for the bird's feet. You can use different types of astroturf, but I highly recommend you use as much of this prickly stuff as you possibly can. This is an aviary that we're currently constructing using this kind of wooden gap system instead of mesh. Gets a bit of air flowing through and avoids having any mesh at all, which is quite a benefit as well. Just going to put the roof on yet. So you've got your perches, you've got your walls. Remember, a double door system, really important. Fully covered roof as well, either fully wooden or you can use the plastic sheets or a bit of both. And the floor, you could use sand. debatable whether that's good or not. You could use gravel, pea gravel, that's very common, and you can actually use astroturf as well, though cleaning astroturf is very, very particular because bacteria and viruses like to stick on plastic, which isn't good at all. And I'm going to do some separate videos specifically on how to professionally clean your aviary and anti-backet, how to put the right substrate in, how to have a waste drainage system would be great if possible. And when it comes to the location of your enclosure, under trees isn't ideal. You can do it, but it's not ideal because things can fall onto the aviary and so on. And ideally, you want a nice flat surface to build on, unlike the situation I've currently got here with different aviaries built around the walls of the property and at the bottom of the garden and so on. Now, we have got plans for a new venue for our birds of prey within the next 2 or 3 years, and it's going to be really exciting. If you want to stay tuned and hear about that, please hit subscribe. We'll be doing videos on that to show the journey of that new adventure, shall we say, here at Our Adventures in the near future, and lots more videos coming up as well on how to keep your birds of prey in a nice, safe environment and have them as fit and as healthy as possible. Hope that was useful for you. See you in the next video.